What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Tim, Mr. Meaningful Work. Welcome to another episode of the Humanly Podcast, where we talk about the stories, the experiences, the nuances that are driving us towards the future of work. And I am super duper excited to reconnect with my friend, Arkesh, who I met at a conference it was in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, it was in Atlanta.
Yeah, a little place outside of Atlanta. Yeah. We got to talking in the hallway, listened to his keynote, and we're just super impressed with his story. We'll get into his origin story, but right now, Arkesh, how you doing, dude?
I'm good. It's very lovely weather out here in Sunnyvale. So it.
Comparing it to what? From what? Where are you coming from that this is lovely?
No. The weather is really good in general. I'm coming from Bentonville, Arkansas.
Is it?
And we are having spring over there, so it's pretty lovely weather as
well. Yeah? Well, this is a good time to be springtime coming into the summer. Does it get humid in
during summers, it does get humid.
Yeah.
In August, September,
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I liked. I went to school in the South. I was in Huntsville, Alabama. And going from Huntsville, visiting Nigeria, it's like you were just at home. Like you didn't feel the difference. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this conversation that we have with Mr. Arkesh. And in lieu of a long, illustrious bio, which my man has, I always like to ask my guests, what are you famous for? And this can be professionally, this can be in your personal life, but if somebody was to hear the name Arkesh, it's like, oh yeah, that's the dude that blank, 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 blank. So what are you famous for, man?
Okay, so, so let me answer that question, from a professional and a personal perspective.
Yeah.
And, both of them have an intersection, in terms of where they come together. So from a professional perspective, I would say, if you probably ask people around in Walmart, who Arkesh is, they would, say that I'm the org design guy.
Org design.
And the talent architecture person, the guy, who built out all the competencies, skills. So that's what I would say my claim to fame is. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time within Walmart, building out the skills framework and then, connecting it back to the various processes around hiring, promotions, learning and so on. And did a lot of that work for the Walmart global tech entity.
Yeah.
If I was to go back to my personal life and, and talk about what am I famous for, I believe probably, a lot of my friends would be like, oh, he's the guy, went into HR.
You went to HR, the HR guy, kind of fell into it or like went intentionally?
So I think it's a combination of both. So I did my undergrads as an engineer.
Oh, okay.
And, and I was working for one of India's largest power producing organizations for a couple of years. And then, typical Indian parents, and then they were like, your education is not complete. You need to go get, a master's.
Yeah.
So, I started looking around and, and I applied for one of these programs, which is one of the best, B schools in India.
Nice.
And the program that I landed in was a specialization in human resource management. I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Let's see where it goes. And here I am.
So you kind of like engineer by trade, but you're able to get this specialization in human resources, which some people, viewers, listeners, correct me if I'm wrong, some folks feel like that's a mutually exclusive, or like engineers, technical builders, and the human resources, the soft side. How would you argue, being that you're both, right? And you're in the tech division of Walmart. So how does those things marry? Human resources, engineering, technology. What does that look like for you?
So I would say there are three parts to it. I mean, I would believe that being an engineer does does give me, certain skills. I mean, I'm not saying if you're not an engineer, you not have them, but also I look at it from a perspective of, three lenses. One is the way, I would approach any situation is from a lens of problem solving.
Okay.
I see most of the situations that, we would come across from a lens of problem solving, and I use a lot of systemic thinking to, talk about a systems-based approach to solving a problem. So, when you start to take that lens, then it, reduces the discomfort, you initially have with the situation, but, you're trying to solve a problem. Then it becomes a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
The second I would say is, just given my engineering background, I guess I've been told, by a couple of, not couple, actually quite a few of my, business partners that I support, that it's easier to have these conversations. Like I sit along with my tech leaders in some of these, product reviews. And I remember some of my concepts from my engineering days, and I'm able to ask questions. Okay, help me understand what's the latency around this product. How did
like, what? The HR guy knows about latency? What?
And then the third thing is when I interview candidates for leadership positions, and particularly officer and above roles, which is VP, SVP roles, and so on. While I want to understand the leadership aspect of what the candidate brings to the table, but I also focus a lot more in terms of what the tech vision is going to be, how does that sort of translate into an operational strategy, and I ask them to explain that to me in a very technical term, in a very technical way. So I think that surprises some candidates.
Yeah.
But I've seen those conversations become a lot more richer, and some of them really engage, as you start to talk to them in their language.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an advantage for me, and I've taken lessons that I've learned in engineering from a systems-based thinking,
Yeah.
and applied them, and that's helped me, build stuff that is a lot more systems-driven,
Yeah.
and is able to connect across multiple pieces of the organization,
Yeah.
and then the other piece of managing stakeholders.
Dude, as you're telling that story, I've been watching this show on Disney Plus, X-Men 97, and it's like a remake of the X-Men series. If anybody know X-Men, there's a bunch of mutants and all these things, but the base of the story now is this kind of mix between mutant and machine and human and all that stuff. And as you're telling your story, it's like, man, you have like these multiple powers. Like you got the powers of engineering, you got the powers of human, and you become this. I'm not calling you a mutant. Don't let it be said.
I mean, I would love to be a mutant. Why not?
You know what I'm saying? But like you have these powers where you're able to understand both sides. You're right. You approach problems from a systems perspective. You're able to speak the language of the engineers. You're able to pull out technical language for the vision for senior leadership. Like that's something that will knock some folks back, but also gives you, it's like, no, we're not messing around. They're like the people side, the vision side, but we also got to be smart about the technology. So yeah, man, let's go. You're an X-Man, dude. You're now an X-Man.
I mean, it's a bit much short, but I'll take a compliment.
Yeah. So you guys may have caught it, right? He serves as a leader for HR for U.S. tech, right? Is that the term is Walmart U.S. tech? So anybody, when you get as big as Walmart, right, you forget that there's also a lot of other divisions and different things that happen within this conglomerate, right? Walmart, I think at last was valued at almost $500 billion, right? It's a huge organization, millions, I think it's like 2 million employees across the world, 1.6 or so here in the United States. And so you have this huge organization. So help folks walk through, like, what does that mean? Walmart U.S. tech. Is it when you walk into a Walmart? Is it the location? Is it what does that mean?
So the way I would explain this is, so we've got 3 business segments. Okay. So there is the Walmart U.S. retail business, which is where you'd see our super centers, the Walmart.com site. Yeah. The neighborhood markets,
the clubs, and all that.
No.
Oh, that's separate.
That's separate. So this is no, all good. So this is the super centers, the .com, the neighborhood markets, the Walmart Go, fuel stations, and all of that stuff. So that's a Walmart U.S. retail business. Then we've got the Sam's Club, which is the clubs. So that's where those are the clubs where we sell a lot of our merchandise from. And then we've got the international business, which is our presence in China, in India, in South Africa. Yeah. Mexico, Chile, Canada, and Central America. So when you look at all of these 3 business segments, there are tech organizations that power each of these 3 business segments. So the people team that I lead for is essentially, the people team that supports the tech organization that powers Walmart U.S., which is our biggest business segment. So,
Okay. So it's powering the business here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long have you been doing that?
Well, I think it's been around 15 to 16 months now.
15 to 16 months. And is it everything that you imagined? Has there been some changes? Has there been some, I'm sure, everybody goes back to BC before COVID and AC after COVID. Has there anything that you saw significantly change in the business given those timelines?
I mean, Tim, I have done like multiple roles throughout my career.
Okay.
So, I mean, this will sound so cliched, but, I sort of expect to be surprised, and, and that sort of takes down the surprise element
Yeah.
a little bit down. So if I was to say, this is my third role at Walmart. So I started off the org design and talent architecture COE, and led that team for a number of years.
Yeah.
And then I moved into a strategy and programs role, chief of staff of sort, and ran programs at scale. And then this is my third role now here. From a surprise element perspective, as I was telling you earlier, just given my, background in consulting and then, and then running a COE, a global COE, and then running programs, I feel that, I was able to understand the breadth of, the people programs that we offer to our associates.
Yeah.
A 360-degree view of that. I was also able to, because of my programs experience, I was also able to, understand the extent of deployment, and that breadth and the depth was covered to a large extent. But I tell you the thing, that that's interesting as you get into a people partner role, or start to play that role across a large section of associates, is the human element that gets gets pulled into almost every decision making. The empathy with our associates when you're making that decision, the balance between the business need and associate need, being able to just play that fine, walk the fine line. So that has been a learning for me.
Yeah. That was actually, you actually touched on something that I really appreciate, which is that conversation about empathy. Right. I think empathy is hard kind of in and of itself. It comes a little easier when it's one-on-one in kind of close-knit relationships. But when you're supporting almost 2 million associates across the U.S. Or across the world, and that number in the U.S., deploying empathy might be hard, right? It might be tough, especially when you start getting into leadership positions and you're responsible for driving results through other people. But being as big as you are, a lot of folks look to you as the example, right? You guys set the tone. The things that you do, folks are going to follow. So, first of all, kind of talk to us a little bit about the state of the industry, right? When we're talking about retail and the associates that support that industry, and what are some of those kind of best practices, those things that folks can look to, in empathy being one, and being able to deploy those learning and development systems for that huge workforce?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, Tim. I mean, so I talk about three things that I'll talk about some of the things that are like pertaining to Walmart, and then I'll talk about the industry in general, like HR industry in general. So when you look at Walmart, one of the things, to your questions in terms of how do we look at our associates, how do we support them in the best possible way? So one of the core values to us is respect for individual. And, when we look at our associates, we try and understand what their needs are, and how do we, better create programs that deliver them to their needs. Like, for example, we've got, learning programs where, we enable our associates to, go and enhance their learnings. Very recently, we took off college degrees from a lot of our jobs to increase the
access
candidate,
and people able to come in,
improve access and increase the candidate pool, expand the candidate pool. So we've been constantly, trying to understand how do we, help. I mean, while we want our customers to save money and live better, but at the same time, we also want our associates to enrich their lives, have meaningful careers and so on. So while I support, the segment that I support is the tech segment, and these are tech associates. But if I was to talk about Walmart in general, I mean, the culture is as such, where we try and understand the associate needs, and try and understand across scale, what are some of those emerging needs, and then you would see those changes happen, which get reported in the news. For example, the example I gave you around the college degrees. What we are trying to do is we're trying to actively, move to a skills-based approach, where if we understand the skills that are required for a job, and irrespective of how you've earned those skills, if you can demonstrate those skills, we would like to consider you for a role, and eventually employ you if you clear all the rounds. So that's just an example of how we are trying to be more associate-centric and move towards helping our associates build meaningful careers.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You mentioned, you dropped in there the logo or the catchphrase that everybody knows, right? Save money. Was it live better? Save money, live better, right? Which is something that is generally understood from a customer perspective, but you're able to put that on the associates as well. It's like, hey, we, as much as we want to add value to the customer population, we need to be able to be focused and intentional on our, I almost keep on saying patient, our associate, population as well, and thereby increasing access, thereby enriching their lives.
Right.
Oftentimes, it's almost the same thing. Sometimes your associates are your customers, right?
Yep.
And when you think about it from that perspective, there shouldn't be any, lines of difference between, hey, what we're doing for them versus what we're doing internally.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, the approach, I'll give you another example, and, that sort of, segues into the state of the industry. Yeah. So if you look at a lot of AI-led innovation that's happening in the market today, a lot of the innovation is around how do I, let's say, improve search results? How do I, give more meaningful outcomes, to my, or, improve outcomes for the customers, right? Yeah. So we said, okay, so if that's the lens we're using for our customers, how can we, turn it around and say, how can we help our associates, right? So towards that, a couple of things that we have done, which is we have, introduced an internal, bot, which is similar to a ChatGPT, but of course in a more secure and closed environment, where our associates can go in and start interacting with the bot to, let's say you want to, think about, you want to have a conversation with regards to goal setting, you need some pointers. Yeah. So this bot can help you with that. You want to have a year-end conversation, you want to talk about, hey, how do I lead with empathy and have this conversation and all that. So bot should be able to help you with that. Yeah. So this is essentially our own version of ChatGPT that associates can use internally. Yeah. So that's one example. The other example is, we've introduced something called as a My Assistant. And this My Assistant is, again, AI-led bot, which is where we are trying to, automate a lot of these processes which would have taken, time otherwise. And I'll give you an example of that. And I've personally used it. So I really like it. So, before, for me to, post a rec, it would take me some time. I need to figure out the fields, the values for these fields, like how many hours does an associate need to work. Standard values, but I have to go through the motions to, open a requisition. However, with, the introduction of the My Hiring module in My Assistant, opening a rec is almost magical. It takes me like 5 seconds. So all that I need to do is, look at my team and, figure out which role I want to open, or, whichever role I want to open, even if it's not in my team right now. Yeah. Pick up the role, click on it, and then say post. That's it.
And everything is done
backend. Yeah, everything in the backend is automated. So, dude, imagine the amount of time you'll be able to save for the users, the managers, similar process of associates.
That was going to be my next thing. Is that magic that happens, right? That what would have normally taken you 30 minutes, an hour, and
10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yeah. It's magical. All right, 5 seconds. Yeah. And so, what does that now open you up as a leader? To focus on? Yep. Right.
I mean, I can, focus the time on other things. Yeah. If I want to have a career conversation and I want to have a performance conversation, I can have more career conversations. Yeah. I can, be more involved in certain activities that I was probably not able to do. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow. That is awesome to be able to. And what would you say, because I know a lot of folks, AI is like the big buzzword. Everybody's trying to, incorporate or create or leverage AI. There's some folks that are, resistant to it. Oh, it's going to take our jobs and, all these different things, and making sure that you're integrating it properly. What would you say has been the adoption? What has been the reception of some of these tools? You mentioned a couple and some of their benefits, but right in real life, what has that adoption been like?
It's been pretty widely adopted across, and I don't have the numbers top of my mind, but people have been widely using these tools, particularly our the ChatGPT kind of bot that I talked about, My Assistant, and all of some of these automations that we're bringing in. And the reason I know that people have been using widely across is because I hear managers and associates talk about it. Yeah. They've been talking about, hey, when I use this, it helped me save time. Similar stories, the one that I shared with you with. And I would say people are welcoming these tools in the organization.
That's good. That's good. And the more acceptance, and something you might have missed is he said he uses it as well, right? So
Oh,
you
yeah,
have that you have that adoption from leadership who can then give personal experience and personal story of, no, this is not just something we're asking you to do. This is something that we also find benefit in, find benefit in as well. So what would you say, if we're looking at the state of the industry and in HR and talent acquisition and all of these things, as we are moving into, a lot of folks are saying, 2024 is kind of that year where most of COVID stuff is behind us, whether it was support or aid or all those things around that, and we're kind of moving into this new post-COVID era. What would you say are some things that you are looking forward to from an industry perspective that you are trying to bring whether it's the tech associates or the tech support group into that future? What does that new future look like for you?
That's a great question. I would say three things. One is, and this is where, okay, so let me talk about it, and then, I'll get a little bit more details in terms of where HR gets involved. So I would say the first thing is, we have been, like across the industry, we've been talking about skills, and we've been talking about, what are these competencies, skills, and so on. When you look at the genesis of skills, it comes from the way, your strategy is defined. What does that mean? The way the work gets done, and then as a result, what the skills are, right? Now, for us to be able to get to a point where we, understand how AI impacts our skills, we'll need to get deeper into how AI impacts the way work gets done.
So you got to go to that click up. So goal kind of cascading to how it's done, going to skills.
Then
and
we get
AI is going to impact this. So we got to see how it affects
right.
Okay.
So, we as, people professionals, HR professionals, I think one of the things that we will need to spend a lot more time, probably in 2024 and even the subsequent years going forward, is understanding how does AI impact the way work gets done, and then be able to define or redefine the skills. Like, for example, think about it this way. A developer today, builds software, A developer spends time in terms of understanding understanding the requirements, writing the code, looking at the architecture, testing it, debugging it, and so on. However, if I was to bring in AI, I need to understand where does, the developer actually start to use AI tools. Like because, if you were to even look at the way we work, I'll not use AI everywhere. I'll probably use AI in places where, it reduces transactional work, or, it gives me a huge amount of saving in terms of time, or improves the quality of work and so on, right? So being able, if I was to, draw 2 by 2 and say which is where, I save the most amount of time, or which is where I save the more, the quality of work goes up significantly. I would say those will be the areas, where we would see the entire impact of AI coming in and, hitting across jobs. So I would say the first thing I would say in the state of the industry is being able to understand how does AI impact work, and then be able to redefine skills. That's one. Okay. Second, I would say, in general, our ability, and this is not related to AI as such, but, this is in general where I believe the industry is starting to move. And I've seen this happen at Walmart, particularly in global tech, when we connected skills to, hiring, promotions, learning, and, to rewards as well. The entire concept of an integrated talent management system where, we are able to, drive it through a common currency of skills is going to be more and more important. Our skills are common currency through which, you hire. Is that the common denominator? Our skills, the common currency through which, you promote. One of the biggest things, with learning is we need to be able to make learning not just relevant for a particular job family, but, relevant to the level of the job that we're talking about. So, let's say you're a software engineer, you want to become a senior software engineer. How do you know which are those particular learnings you need to go through? What are those experiences you need to get, right? So can we connect skills to that? So I've been able to connect skills, and, I've seen this, play out for our tech associates at Walmart, and we're doing that at, scale for across our other associates at Walmart as well. But I would say that's where the second focus area is going to be, and this is going to catch on a lot more steam going forward. The third thing, to our point, which we talked earlier, a lot of emphasis around, well-being and belonging, started with COVID, right? I mean, there were multiple things that happened at that point of time, and we as humans became a lot more conscious of well-being. belonging also, and I'm using the term belonging more,
Yeah.
particularly because belonging is a lot more inclusive.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So I would say, as we move into, AC after COVID era,
Yeah.
so our, ability to continue to maintain our sights on well-being and belonging as, key pillars of human experience
Yeah.
is going to be important. So I would say these would be the three things that I would see the industry going and focusing moving forward.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but Arkesh has you could tell he's a developer because every answer comes in threes, right? He's already thought about it. He categorizes it and he gives the explanation in the context and then, gives those points. Like that is literally the manifestation, the demonstration of what he was talking about before, as far as like that superpower of being able to attack it from a systems kind of process standpoint. He does it in real life, like just naturally. I just noticed that. Like it's very methodical, but that was good. I mean, what I took away from that is the impact of AI on how work is done will then determine the skills that are needed, right? I'm thinking some of the most kind of ubiquitous uses of AI right now is like writing, right? Marketing, making copy and things like that. And you think about how does a writer go through the process and what would you want to train? I know for me, when I'm using ChatGPT, it's usually at that brainstorming phase, right? I just need to, I'm thinking of ideas. I'm trying to pull converging forces and articulate it in a way. It's not necessarily about putting the right grammar or having the story flow. Like that's not the skill, but it's the brainstorming, right? How do I think about bringing these things into a succinct format? So I liked how you said, it's like, it's AI is going to affect it, but we need to see how the work is done and then figure out the skills there.
I'll give you a couple of examples, and I've been thinking about this. The way AI will start to benefit, and I'll use the term benefit, because I truly believe AI benefits humanity. The way it will start to benefit associates across levels is going to be different. For example, someone fresh out of college is probably going to leverage AI to learn. Someone who is a little bit more experienced, like the example you gave, is probably going to use AI to validate or augment. And then someone who is a little bit more experienced is probably going to use AI to review. And think about it this way: like there's a beautiful video out there. It's about how, I believe it was DeepMind, worked in developing a AI bot that essentially beat world's best Go player. I'm hoping it's DeepMind. In that, what happened is AI did end up, and AI was constantly learning from various Go players. And Go is a very difficult game. I don't personally play, but what I understood from the video was it's a very difficult game, and it's got like multiple, like millions and millions of alternatives. So when the AI bot started playing with world's best Go player, I believe out of the 5 games, the world's best player maybe won one of them. And what he came back and said, as like some of those moves AI made were inhuman. Like like you would never expect someone to do that kind of move. And his game went up. And so I believe that the more we interact with AI, we'll start to know things that we didn't know that we knew, we didn't know about. So the Johari window, the dark triad, right? The dark quadrant, right? Stuff that you don't know that you don't know. So I feel it's going to help us uncover a lot around that area.
Wow, we get better because AI is better, right? Like
I think it's a mutual learning process.
It's a mutual process. And the thing I want us to talk about now, you talked about well-being, which I appreciate, because I also want to speak to the performance management, and how do you make sure that your folks are doing well. In my experience, well people do well. Right? Folks that feel like they belong, folks that feel like their opinion matters, or folks that feel that their organization supports them as a human, right? Not just a worker or an associate and the stuff that you do in the 8 or 12 or whatever hours that you're doing here, but what are the different ways, the different factors that are influencing your life, and how can we be supportive or celebrate or what have you? So from a tech standpoint, right, you mentioned well-being as a focus for the future, both how tech is going to, or how AI is going to affect how work is done, skills being the currency for everything, for development and being more intentional about that. And then well-being, right? How to be more intentional about that. So what are some things that organizations can be thinking about, right? If it's one or two simple interventions that will help their people feel like they belong, like they can be well, so they can do well.
Yeah.
What has worked for you in your experience? What advice would you give to folks in that space?
So I would segment this into two parts, not three, two parts.
Y'all saw it. Y'all saw it.
So one, I would say, is the bouquet of benefits that most organizations provide. You know, you can go out there and, benchmark and you'll be able to get that. I would say in that particular segment, a lot more emphasis has been on mental well-being.
Yeah.
Our ability to, recognize the fact that, people can, get tired, mentally fatigued, they need support. I feel the welcome change around, like you seeking out a counselor, you seeking out a coach, like that has been a welcome change. And I see a lot of organizations supporting that, and even Walmart supports, like, you want to use, one of our, like we provide benefits where people can, reach out, get a coach, counselor, talk to them and so on. So I would say that continued focus on, well-being through, the mental well-being piece of it, along with everything else, the physical well-being, the emotional well-being and so on. I would say that's important.
Yeah.
The second piece is a slightly, it's a bit of longer, connection. So bear with me for a minute. I feel a lot of experience that, that we experience in our jobs is driven by the managers that we work for. So one of the emphasis, one of the things that, I've been trying to emphasize, across the organization that, I support is how do we, and this is what we have been also trying to drive for all of global tech and corporate functions, so, managers, how do we, enable the managers to have, more enriching, performance conversations, career conversations? How do we enable them to, just lead people better, become better leaders?
Yeah.
So I would say well-being also gets impacted a lot by that. And our ability to, help build managerial ability, their leadership skills, their ability to, empathy is a difficult skill to build, so I won't get there. But, just ability to understand where the other person is coming from and then enable them for success.
Yeah.
So that's the other piece, I would say is important from a well-being perspective.
Wow. I love that. It's a very holistic approach, right? You have support for the associates and making sure that in addition to all the perks and benefits that kind of enrich life and help you do what you need to do, you're also looking at the emotional, the psychological support and coaching and all that stuff. But the leaders, right? Leaders have a huge impact on how employees experience the work that they do. And so if we focus on giving the leaders what they need, because it's draining, right? As a leader, if you don't know how to have a critical conversation, if you don't know how to coach for performance, if you don't know how to, all of these things, that's energy draining, and that drains your well-being as a leader as well. And so when you feel like you have the tools, when you feel like you're empowered, and there is a feeling of kind of that reciprocation where when the employee feels elevated, you also feel elevated. That energy is transition there. So that's good. You guys are doing a lot of good things in those in the work supporting the U.S. tech there. So last thing we'll just kind of close out here is we the one of the original iterations of the Humanly podcast was exploring what's humanly possible, right? There's a lot of technology influence that is taking away some of the more kind of utilitarian skills and activities and things like that. It's like, okay, what do we explore? What humans can do, what they can evolve into, what they can produce and contribute to the world. And so I'll leave it with you to just kind of share with us what is an experience that you have had, whether it was a leader that you had, or an employee or an associate, somebody that really unlocked for you what was humanly possible for you. So maybe you hadn't seen it or experienced it before, but because of that connection or interaction, something was unlocked for you. Do you have a story like that?
Oh, I have so many stories.
So many.
So let me talk about two stories, and both of them are coming from a different perspective.
Yeah.
So one is, for a leader that I've worked, and the other is, for someone who's on my team. So, I've learned from both of them.
Yeah.
So for the leader, that I've worked, she was one of my previous, managers. And while I pride myself, being a systems-based thinker, being able to, parse out things and, problem solve, I think one of the things that I learned from her was the ability to create a solution and adapt quickly. What happens a lot of times is, there's a lot of new information that keeps coming to us. And we are then, in a position where we need to make a decision. Do we, stick to what we built, or do we go ahead and adapt? Because there is new information coming in. And when you're looking at that, from a strategy perspective at 40,000 feet, that means a lot of execution that goes down below. So that strategic agility is a very difficult, strength to build.
Strategic agility. That's a new one. I'm going to write that down somewhere. Strategic, the stretching, the aerobics.
At 40,000 feet.
At 40,000. Yeah. The air's thin up there.
I know. So I would say that strategic agility piece, being able to foresee a lot of these things, and then being able to rebalance and, being able to reprioritize. I would say that's something I learned. And, I worked very closely with her, for almost 2 years. And I would say that's a skill that's been, very handy for me because it does two things for you. One is it, keeps you nimble. And, when these surprises come at you, you're not truly that surprised because you're prepared, for solving those problems. Second is also makes the solution a lot more acceptable to the stakeholders. Because the guiding principles, the first principles need to be consistent. They can't be changing. But, at the same time, the plan that we've built out, that needs to be, the strategy might shift and could shift, and us being prepared for it and being able to socialize and being able to operationalize that is important. So that's something that I've learned. That's awesome. Was a key skill. The second thing I'll talk to you about, is someone who's worked with me, for a number of years. And I think what happens is, we should do, another podcast on feedback. I think I've gone through an entire experience in terms of, taking feedback, giving feedback, and so on. I think what happens is we seek feedback, but at the same time, we are all also humans. So we want the feedback to be given in a way where we are open.
How we can receive it.
Exactly. We're receptive towards it, right? So I think working with this person on my team, I think what she did is she taught me, she actually helped me understand how I was more receptive to feedback when it was particularly coming from someone on the team. So, it's easy to, you don't have an option, when you get a feedback from someone who's, who you're reporting to. They want to give you feedback, irrespective of whether you like it or not. Or, it's a senior stakeholder, it's a top down. But, when you're getting a bottom up feedback, just being able to understand how, you're receptive towards it, you could listen to it, but whether you're receptive to it or not, only you know about it. So by understanding, how I was receptive to feedback, I was able to share that with others. So now when I get feedback, about me, from someone on my team, or, someone necessarily who does not have a, power distance, from a vertical upward perspective, I'm more receptive to it, and I'm able to act on it. I'm able to create that, psychologically safe environment across. So that was a big learning for me.
That's good. It's like you unblocked yourself, or that opened you to be able to open those channels to receive that feedback. And you have to be open. You have to be open to get the feedback to open up, right? It's like, it's the whole thing, right? And that takes a lot of self-awareness. That takes a lot of vulnerability, a lot of transparency there. I've had similar stuff in my team where I'd asked, they weren't giving it to me because, Tim is this and this and that, all positive things, but it was hard for them to give critical, constructive feedback. So I had to have my one up, talk to my people to ask, hey, what can, Tim do? And one of the feedback that they gave that really helped unlock is, oftentimes he's like, Tim is always at 100%, and sometimes we're okay. We need him at
80%.
We don't have to be all the way up here all the time. And so my default is rah, rah, hey. But somebody might just be chilling at a 50, right? And it's okay, I don't know if I'm going to come all the way down to a 50, but I need to be aware of where they are and kind of meet them where they are and not, just kind of overpower with that. And so that allowed me to connect with some folks that I probably wouldn't have been able to connect with unless I had received, that. So that's powerful. That's powerful. That's good. That's unlocking what's humanly possible. Now you have that strategic agility at 40,000 feet, and you've opened yourself to more feedback from both the top and those that are in your scope of work. So, well, man, like you said, we might have to do a whole separate side episode on just feedback and the benefits and things from that. But for our time now, is there anything that you would like to let folks know, HR professionals, talent acquisition folks, kind of folks in this industry, that if they walk away with something from listening to Arkesh and they have a sound bite, what would that be for them?
Oh, wow. Elevator pitches are really difficult. I would say, going back to the first point that I made around the state of the industry, which is understanding how our skills of the future are going to get defined, particularly in the light of AI, is going to be hugely impactful around the entire associate life cycle. Yeah. So that's going to be important.
Look at the future. Look at the future and see how that future of work is going to be impacted, and then reverse engineer that to figure out what you have to do, what you have to do today to be ready for that. So we're going to wrap it up. Arkesh, I really, really appreciate you coming out. I'm glad we're able to connect in person here in sunny California. And if you guys have any questions, we'll drop information as where to find him on LinkedIn. He speaks a lot. Maybe less a lot. He speaks a lot on a lot of the topics that we talked about, and so you can hear some of his wisdom through his channels there. But we appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by on this Humanly podcast. We'll catch you on the next one.
Jim, I just want to thank you for having me.
Oh,
and great questions. Love the segment. Thank you so much,
dude. I appreciate it. My pleasure. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you on the next one. Peace.